So there's a number of things going on with the polls, folks. Let's review just quickly some things said yesterday. One of the reasons that you tout a big lead at the same time early voting begins is to suppress Romney early voters. Who wants to vote for a loser? Oh, gosh, here we go again. We really don't have a chance. They know that so many people on our side, all I got to do is listen to the average conservative pundit and realize that they're mired in negativity and pessimism. So you build it up. You put out a poll that shows a massive Obama lead, and early voting goes on, and so you stoke Obama voters, you depress Romney voters. You convince the voters that your candidate's so far ahead he can't lose, then why waste your vote on a loser? And thanks to early voting, then the media can skew the polls early on and make the race suddenly tighter in the last weeks for Election Day to try to preserve their so-called credibility. But by then, see, I firmly believe the polls are being used right now in a number of ways. But one is a tie into early voting to get Obama votes out there, suppress Romney votes. Fundraising, too. And the third thing is just to be, I'll repeat this again to make sure, you look at 2004 and how many John Kerry voters believe the exit polls that showed Kerry winning big, by the way. Both the first two waves, 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock, on Election Day 2004, John Kerry looked like was going to be elected president. And the libs all bought it. And they were celebrating before the polls closed. Polls closed and the real votes started being counted, and the exit polls were horribly wrong. I mean, it wasn't just a little bit wrong. They were horribly wrong. And the result was that Democrats actually believed the exit polls and thought the real vote was fraudulent and wanted recounts and all kinds of stuff in Ohio. So it doesn't take great sage to predict here what they do and what they're capable of. So if you have all these liberals and all these Democrats believing these polls that Obama's up in these swing states by 8 to 12 points, and if he loses one or two of them and loses the election, why, it's an automatic conclusion. They're going to think there was voter fraud. So that's being set up as a possibility, too. This stuff is their life. Power, holding it, acquiring it, using it is their life. It isn't ours. We want to win so that we can get this stuff out of our lives. They want to win so that it is everybody's life, meaning government, and the people who deal with it. Now, our discussion yesterday reverberated all across the media. We have some soundbite examples. Let's go to the 5 on Fox at 5 yesterday afternoon during a segment on the polls. Greg Gutfeld led off.
I want to talk about Rush Limbaugh. He is talking about how the polls reflect the mindset or the ideology of Democrats and not America as a whole. And then let's take it from there.
The purpose of the people right now, most of them that are doing these polls, they're trying to make news, not reflect it. They're advancing an agenda. They're all Democrats. They're all liberals. They just have different jobs. The polls are the replacement refs. They're watching, they see certain things, they don't see other things. They don't call certain things, and other things go by. Bob Beckel next.
No, they're not all liberal Democrats. There's plenty of Republican polling firms out there. Rush ought to stick to what he does very well, which is to be a radio talk show host, not try to second-guess pollsters. Look, you can argue about how these polls are reflected, and some of them have a slight bias one way or a slight bias the other. In the end, most of them turn out to be unbelievably accurate, in not only in politics but in a lot of other things. The amount of stuff that we depend on for polling is a lot in this country, in marketing and every other way. So I think that all these attacks on polls, if you're not doing well on the polls, that's the time you attack.
Yeah, well, we ran through yesterday who ended up being the closest and the most accurate to the outcome in 2008. It was Rasmussen. The polls that we were talking about yesterday finished 18th, 19th, and 20th. They don't get it right. They try to at the end of the day. Their last series of polls last week, they tried. That's when their credibility is made. Nobody remembers the polls today after the election, although we might this year. It's a good chance we will remember the polls this week after the election. But they don't all get it right. Some of them are way, way off. You just don't hear about it because they don't report how bad they were. They don't report how off they were. And everybody's moved on. After the election, none of it matters. It's not accurate to say that these people are all accurate and that they all get it close or get it right. They don't. Dana Perino next on Fox.
One of the complaints about the polls is the samples, and that looking at who came out in 2008 to vote for President Obama will not be the same in 2012. And so some of the more conservative Republican pollsters are saying they are smoking something if they think it's going to be the same turnout in 2008. That is not the case, but the polling is using that same model, and that's their complaint.
That's exactly right. Nobody believes that the Democrats are going to show up in a +7 or +9 or +11 majority at the polls November. It's the Republicans who are energized. The Democrats are not. And polling shows that. So a poll that shows 11% or 9% more Democrats are going to show up to vote than Republicans cannot be believed. That's not going to happen. And Rasmussen's party identification survey, most recent, August 31st, shows that it's +4 Republicans nationwide. 4% more people identify themselves as Republicans as Democrats. So the sampling, nobody's using 2010. Nobody is using the 2010 turnout as their sample. And there's, well, that's right, Mr. Limbaugh, because that was not a presidential race. You don't make turnout for off-season, blah, 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 blah. Sure, we're also going to throw it out because it was a Democrat landslide loss all the way down the ballot. So we're not going to use that. Last night, Greta Van Susteren, she had a panel on her show. Talk about the polls. Steve Hayes from the Weekly Standard was one. And she said, ignore it. That's what Rush has to say about these swing state polls. Is Rush right? Are these polls slanted toward Democrats, toward Obama? Steve, first to you.
Yes, I think they oversampled Democrats. I don't think there's any question about it. It would mean a record turnout for President Obama in those states to produce the kinds of results that we saw. Now, that doesn't mean that these polls are useless. If there's consistent oversampling inside a poll, like the CBS New York Times poll, has been pretty consistently over the last 3 polls, +8 or 9 for Democrats. So you can see trends inside of that, even if they're oversampling.
Now, there is inside the Beltway a brotherhood, a fraternity, and a sorority. I mean, it's all, and they're very rarely will you see those inside the Beltway. Well, I take that back. The libs inside the Beltway will go for the throat of our guys and try to destroy them. Our guys won't. There's a mutual respect. So at the same time you rip them for having an outright crazy sample, you then say, well, but there's a reason that they're doing it, so we can see it and blah, 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 blah. So there's a collegiality that exists. And, of course, I and those of us outside Washington are not taken in by or not sucked into. So our comments are not softened or filtered. Here's Michael Crowley. He is the Time Magazine senior correspondent. And after Stephen Hayes said what you just heard him say, Crowley jumped in.
Pollsters want to get it right. The idea that there's a conspiracy, that they are trying to root for one side, that they're trying to depress one side's turnout, to me, it just doesn't make sense. I just find it impossible to believe. They want to get it right. And, these polls do suggest a margin that I think is pretty wide.
Yeah, that's the problem. They said Democrat margin is pretty wide, yet they don't want to get it wrong. They don't want to suppress the vote. Look at Mr. Crowley, with all due respect. We have seen too much out here. We see it each and every day. You do have a vested interest in the outcome of this, tremendously so. You have no interest in Mitt Romney winning this. That would be a disappointing thing to you. The idea that you want to try to portray all you people who do this as not having no interest in the outcome or interested in getting it right. You're interested in winning, and you will use what's at your disposal to facilitate victory. And we see it. We would be blind not to see it. That's why I say the polls taken, the last poll or the last couple of polls taken near the election, that's where they try to establish their credibility. Right now, the idea that they wouldn't use their polling data to try to advance an agenda is absurd. Why would the media polling be any different than media reporting? Why, the polling companies are sacrosanct, independent, not affected by no. Folks, let me. On the other hand, here, I'm not. This isn't sour grapes, and I'm not complaining about it. I'm actually trying to deeply analyze this, try to explain it, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I don't know how you arrive at the idea that 10 to 11% more Democrats are going to turn out to vote than Republicans. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how you get a result that shows a majority of Americans think Obama is better suited to run the economy than anybody else. The economy has gone straight south for 3.5 years under his watch. We have to believe that people don't blame him, that he's just a victim himself of previous administrations, and boy, he's really worked hard and he's really tried. Poor guy, we really love him. We hope he does. That's the majority sentiment in the country. That's what they want us to believe. Also, there's this notion out there that losers and people who think they're losing or know they're losing immediately start constructing excuses way in advance, like blaming it on the polls. It's not what we're doing here, because I don't think we're going to lose. I think we're watching something profound. I've never seen media bias the way it is. I've never seen a media in the tank the way it is. I've never seen corruption in the media the way it has been the last 3.5 years, not just in this campaign, but the last 3.5 years. I have never seen, even going back to the 2008 campaign, I've never seen a media go out of its way to not tell the people of this country about one of the two men who wants to be president. I have never before in my life seen a media go out of its way to keep people from finding out who one of the men who wants to be president really is. Not to the degree that it happened in 2008. One more before we go to the break, and this is the managing editor of TheHill.com, Bob Cusack.
Rush has a point. I don't think that Obama is up double digits in these states, because these polls are assuming 2008 turnout for Obama. Do I think Obama's up in these battlegrounds? Yes. Do I think he's up 8, 10, 12 points in these battleground states? I don't think so.
Okay. I appreciate that, but I still have a question. I'm just a naturally inquisitive human being. If you don't believe the polls, not up 10, 12, but he's still up. Why? Why do you think he's up? If you don't believe the sample, you think the sample's incorrect. If you don't believe it's 8, 10, 12, is it 2? Is it 3? What? Why? I'm not being critical. I just did an open-ended question. Why? Yeah, he's winning. Not by 8, 10, 12, but he's winning. Really? Well, why? How? What's the data on that?